Joining us right now, also on the edge of his seat, happy to talk to the ESPN NFL Nation reporter for the Buffalo Bills. We talked to him in training camp. Happy to have him back, Marcel Louis-Jacques. Hello, Marcel. Thanks for coming by.
Hey, thanks for having me, as always, man. Love to be in the studio with y'all.
We appreciate you coming in.
We're glad you're here. You've been in and around training camp. We had John during training camp as well, and at the time we had John, I think Mitch Morse was injured. He still is. What are your thoughts on the offensive line coming into this game? Are you thumbs up, thumbs down, or kind of somewhere in the middle?
Well, I think they were in a position of concern a couple weeks ago when they're seemingly just dropping like flies. You know, Long's missing time, Feliciano is missing time, Morse is out, Waddle goes on IR, and Secchi is in and out of practice. But I think they're finally starting to find some health and some continuity. Mitch Morse entering stage 5 of concussion protocol is an excellent sign. I mean, if you're a Bills fan, that's what you've been more or less waiting for the past 2-3 weeks. But I think that the panic button, you can slowly start to back away from it a little bit. They're looking like that top 5 is going to be ready for week 1 at the Jets. It looks like they've got some depth in Feliciano, and they've got some depth in Long. Still trying to really cement who that swing tackle is going to be. But offensive line problems are not as dire as they were a few weeks ago.
Who is your top 5?
My top 5 in order, starting at left tackle, we got Deion Dawkins, Quentin Spain, Mitch Morse, Cody Ford, Ty and Secchi.
That's my top 5. Yeah,
that's what they're going to run with when everybody is healthy and ready, and active. I could imagine. That's just the most talented lineman that you have on roster right now, and that includes Ford at guard, not tackle.
Right, that's the thing. Secchi's a better tackle than Feliciano or Long at guard, right? That's the idea, right?
Yeah, and Ford is just a better guard than he is tackle. I mean, that position flexibility is so key for him, and that was such a plus for him entering the draft. That's why a lot of people pegged him as a first-round pick. But I think his strength right now is at right guard instead of tackle, but that's not to say he can't play it.
Right.
Marcel, one thing, and it's a bit of a blue sky, rose-colored glasses thing that we've heard from McDermott now for about a week, but it's correct. They have developed some versatility by virtue of these injuries they've had. Do you agree?
They do, and it's just the NFL is a league of opportunity here, and injuries happen all the time. And that's when you're going to see guys step up into positions that they might not be comfortable with, they might not be accustomed to, but that's how you learn. I'm a firm believer that the best way to learn is through immersion. So force guys into the first team, force guys at tackle, force guys at center who have never played center before in Ryan Bates, and let them learn and let them react to adversity, because it's not going to be sunshine and rainbows come Sundays.
So, before the third preseason games, and you're sitting here and you've seen all these offensive line moves and switches and adjustments and adaptations. Have they done enough? Have they got enough guys?
I think you can never have enough offensive linemen. That's the physicality that comes with the position. Injuries are just going to be more common there on the line. But I think it's a strong enough top 5, especially compared to what last season's featured. I think the flexibility and depth that Long and Feliciano add is promising. I think getting McDermott back would be promising, Teller as well. Time will tell. Time will tell. But for right now, I think, like I said before, we can start to, take our hands away from that big red button on the desk that says panic on it, and look forward to a pretty healthy week 1.
Last offensive line question I have for you, Marcel, is what about cohesion? What about communication up front? They're never going to get a chance to do that when it doesn't count.
Yeah, and I thought it was interesting that McDermott said today, Morse has been around the league long enough that preseason's important, but you would think, okay, it's not the end of the world if he doesn't get into a game these four preseason games. But McDermott said no, he needs the reps, just like he himself needed reps. That adjusting to a new scheme, a new team, new guys on either side of you, that takes time. You don't want to have to learn that on the fly, especially during what we'll call it 5-6 game stretch to start the season, where you can get off to an excellent start if you're Buffalo. I mean, you can set the tone for the entire year. You can't afford to lose games because of a lack of cohesion on the offensive line. And so I see the importance in that. I still wouldn't expect Morse to get any preseason action beyond maybe one single series, if that even, though. It's just the risk kind of outweighs the reward.
What do you think about the Josh Allen, the preseason he's put together? I mean, this is an offense that really, in Carolina, they didn't have Luke Kuechly on the other side of the football. And nobody's playing their starters. The Bills are getting some reps with Josh Allen, some ones, and finally did that in Carolina and had a good week leading up to that during the practices. What are your thoughts on Josh Allen's preseason? Has success been too easy?
I mean, it's really hard to fault a guy for doing what he's asked to do. And when you're playing against a Carolina defense without Kuechly, without Shaq Thompson, I mean, that's what you expect to do. And I think that's a positive sign in its own right, that when you're facing, we'll call it inferior, for lack of a better word, inferior competition, you have to be able to execute. And from what I think we all saw, he executed his game plan just like he needed to. He pushed the ball downfield when necessary. We saw the couple completions to Tommy Sweeney. He took his checkdowns. We saw him just really force feed almost Cole Beasley. But, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I can't fault him for taking these checkdowns because it's just the safe option. It's the smart option. And his job, I think we talked about this last time I was on the show, his job is not to be the hero or the savior of this team. The strength of the Buffalo Bills does not lie in Josh Allen's right arm, no matter how strong it is. All he needs to do is not mess up. In year two, you're kind of a, enhanced game manager here. They don't need him to go out and push the ball downfield in order to win games. They just need him to be efficient with the ball. They need him to score points when need be and let the defense do the rest.
We're on the line with ESPN's Marcel Louis-Jacques. He is the ESPN NFL Nation reporter covering the Buffalo Bills. And Marcel, you wrote about Bills' first-round draft pick Ed Oliver. What do you think? How's he doing after 2 games? And maybe more importantly, how does he think he's doing after 2 games?
Yeah, he's just got this. I spoke with Shaq Lawson, who said that he's just got this confidence about him that's not normal for a first-year player.
Not cocky, is he?
It's not cocky, and I think that was something I really wanted to focus on in the article. That this isn't some sort of rookie bravado where you're a first rounder and you need to show that I'm big and bad. I'm worth the $10 million a year. He just wants to. He's very aware of what he can do when he's on the field, and I think that shows, and that's shown in the first 2 games.
I love the fact that in the face of Cam Newton's, constant chatter last week in practice, Ed Oliver, the most he could do is just glare at him, stare him down. I love that.
Yeah, I must have watched that video 60 times. I'm not going to lie to y'all here. But that's Cam being Cam. First of all, we shouldn't look too far into it. I know I tweeted a lot about it, but it was not serious. That's just
Cam,
how Cam,
right?
he likes to, poke the bear a little bit. But I think it kind of spoke volumes as to who Oliver is as a person to, turn back. I think we're saying it here, to turn back and face him just to hear Cam out. Give him a chance to say, hey, are you going to say anything directly to me? Or is this the case where your mom's talking about you to her friends in the living room and you just kind of have to wear it?
Right.
But he didn't say anything, just kind of shook his head and went back to work. And that's what Ed Oliver does. That's who he is. He's not about that trash talk when it comes to opponents. He might jaw back and forth with his teammates, as Shaq said and as Ed himself admit. But, I mean, you see him right here. It's just like, okay, I hear what you're saying. That's fine. You're a little bigger than I thought, but talk your stuff.
I like that reaction.
Yeah, is there anything to be made, and not for nothing, but Ed Oliver and this coaching staff has never given any of these players anything. When they earn it, they get it. Ed Oliver went from being a 2 to a 1 really fast ahead of Jordan Phillips. And Jordan Phillips is a very good player. Does it say anything about what does it say about that? I mean, do you think he earned it, or do you think they were saying, okay, he's playing good enough, let's stick him in there?
I think you've seen it, or we've seen it ever since the pads went on, I think the 3rd day of training camp, where he's exactly what they drafted him to be. He's a disruptor, and that, in the interior defensive line. And I mean, that's what they need. That was the weak point of this defense, was getting after the quarterback. 26th in sacks, that's not an elite trait for what should be an elite defense. And so what they need him to do is exactly what he's doing: wreak havoc, force double teams, open things up a little bit for Jerry Hughes, for Trent Murphy, and Shaq Lawson. And this is the NFL. You're not just going to be thrust into a lineup if you don't earn it, and especially with a guy like Sean McDermott. I don't think that it should be taken lightly that he's running with the ones this early in his career.
Marcel, I mentioned to Steve an hour ago about the Buffalo defense, 2 preseason games in, how impressed I was with the depth they have developed. You know what I mean? They were number 2 defense last year. They were pretty good. But now they got backups who seem to play well. And again, I know who they're going against, but I'm encouraged about the way the backup defenders have played through 2 games.
And this goes back to what I'm saying before, what I said before about Josh Allen and not undermining his success, that you can't knock a guy for doing what he's expected to do. Like if you're a 4th-string guy and you're going against 4th-stringers and you're still finding success, like that's a positive. It's hard to just write that off and say, oh, he's a 4th-stringer. He's a 4th-stringer too. This is equal competition for him, and he's showing that he can excel. And when I'm saying that, I'm thinking specifically of Darrell Johnson, he's just done nothing but make plays whenever he gets the opportunity. We saw a sack and a deflection in week 1. I believe we saw another sack and forced fumble in week 2. And for a guy that, a 7th-round pick, and Leslie Frazier shed a little light on that yesterday. This is a premium position. It's one of, we'll call it 4 or 5 positions where, people will trade up, they'll mortgage a future to go get an elite pass rusher. And so you don't see a lot of high impact guys fall and slip through the cracks. Darrell Johnson might be one of them. And I think if he does pan out, especially with a little bit of uncertainty opposite of Jerry Hughes, I think this could be a really valuable steal for Buffalo. Like I said, though, if he pans out and the success translates to the regular season.
One of the guys I wanted to ask you about, we started out talking about Josh Allen, and you're right, you can't get on the guy for doing what he's asked to do. Cole Beasley's been asked to get open underneath. Now, they were playing, I would think Cole Beasley in the game against Carolina where he had 5 targets, 5 catches. We've all heard about it. And even Josh Allen is saying, people are saying, well, it was too easy for him. Well, that's Cole Beasley's job, right? And do you think Cole Beasley is going to be as big of effect throughout the season as he was in the Carolina game?
I would expect him to be. He's a mismatch, and Carolina often they're trying to defend him with a linebacker, and that's just not going to work against a guy like Beasley, who is not trying to blow by you. He's trying to shake you free. And what I really loved, he had a completion against I believe it was Jermaine Carter on one of those first 2 drives where he immediately breaks himself open, and as soon as he can tell that he's got space, he angles that route upfield, and he wants to maximize as many yards as he can possibly get with every target. And I think having that kind of safety net, that's like an incentive for Josh Allen to continue to adjust mentally, his habits, his reads, his progressions. That's an incentive to start looking at your checkdowns and start playing it safe. If you've got a guy who this guy's going to do whatever it takes to get 6-7 yards anytime he touches the ball, then yeah, here's the ball.
The Bills did not have that dimension in their passing game last year, and now they seem to have it with Cole Beasley, and now they seem to want to use it, which is important too. And I don't think they want to take the deep pass out of the offense either, right? No, I haven't seen a lot of it in 2 preseason games, but
no, and because I think that deep ball is more of a situational tool than it should be
of your offense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be the focal point of your. It's one of the least efficient plays in football.
Right.
That's like in basketball, basing your offense around a half-court shot. Looks great, but come on.
I thought you were going to say 3-pointers. Teams do base it on 3-pointers now.
Yeah, they do
not
now.
A half-court shot. But he's right. It's a half-court shot. It's basically what it is.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's not as automatic as Steph makes a 3-pointer, makes threes look. But like I say, it's a tool, and that's why they add a guy like John Brown who can stretch that field, because when defenses start to suck in, when Allen's hitting Beasley across the middle repeatedly, and in a perfect world for them, that run game is still, it's still a force to be respected. It might not be dominant, but defenses would have to respect it. Safeties are going to start to creep up, and that's when you try to take the top off.
Is that? Can you foresee kind of the typical slot receiver like we've seen before? A guy like Cole Beasley who comes out with 110 catches and has 950 yards. You know what I'm saying? An 8 or 9 yard per completion kind of thing, like clockwork, and that's kind of be his thing.
It's not completely out of the question. I think his career high is 75 catches in a season.
Right.
And that was in an offense that, by his words, didn't value him, didn't use him correctly. I think Buffalo's going to be pretty pass heavy this season. It's not out of the question that he sees triple-digit targets.
Right.
Whether he hits that 1,000-yard plateau or whether he, even breaks that 100-catch barrier is yet to be seen. That's those are very gaudy numbers to project without, this early in the process. But I think he could end up being one of those guys whose value is underappreciated. One of those guys like how hate to compare, a proven pro to a college player, but kind of like how Hunter Renfrow was at Clemson, who, he's not putting up the crazy numbers, but he's consistently moving the chains. He's a consistent option. He's a reliable option. I think Cole Beasley's career catch percentage is somewhere around 75%. That's like I said, that's just reliable.
Talking with Bills reporter Marcel Louis-Jacques of ESPN. I've been asking this question or a version of this question since day 2 of the draft back in April. Do you have any sense of where they're going with the running back group, and not just this Friday, but as they approach cutdown day and the start of the regular season? What do you think?
I think the top 3 is pretty solidified. I think McCoy, Gore, and Singletary are locks. You can
keep all 3.
Keep all 3. You can quote me on that if you want.
Use all 3.
I think you use all 3.
How do you do that?
LaShawn will probably get the first crack. I think he and Gore will more or less split carries doing the same role. But Devin Singletary's kind of in his own category. They're using him like Tariq Cohen, like a Darren Sproles. Like I think LA uses Austin Eckler as well as almost a hybrid slot receiver and running back. You're going to see him in motion a lot. You're going to see him running wheel routes. You're going to see him taking jet sweeps. And I think he can be a very valuable gadget player. I don't know if he's a 3-down back. I don't know if he's a feature back. But you don't really have to be you don't have to be in today's NFL. You can be a very valuable and productive running back in that exact role. And if he grows in that, then he's somebody to definitely watch. Obviously, after that, that's when after those 3, it gets a little hairy.
Right.
Obviously they signed TJ Yeldon. He's a proven NFL running back. He's proven he can come in case of injury and be productive. But his lack of experience on special teams, I think, might hurt him here. In that case, I would put probably Sonoris Perry over him. I like what I've seen out of Marcus Murphy as well as a runner. I think he's lightning quick. I think he hits his holes very hard. He, just like Beasley, he tries to maximize how many yards he gets every time he touches the ball. It's just that his skill set may be a little bit redundant with Devin Singletary in that top 3.
Unless he can do all of that and play special teams as well. And because you're right, the top 3 guys are going to get 95% of the carries, maybe, and DeMarco gets 1 carry for the season, at a fullback. And I think, do you think they're just going to, and here's the way I think it's going to go, LaShawn and Frank Gore are going to, whoever's having the good bets day gets on the field. And they'll give LaShawn the first crack, and if he keeps going well, Frank will spell him and then come off the field, and LaShawn's right back out there. And just the opposite if it's one of those days where Frank Gore has to get the tough yards after contact.
I agree. I think LaShawn is still, even at this stage of his career, I think he's more of a home run hitter than Frank Gore. He's looked, as spry as ever for how long he's been in the league. He doesn't look like he's lost a whole lot. But I think he's a powerful between the tackles runner. He's a consistent, you know what you're going to get with him. And you need to chew clock. You need to eat some yards up. Then you're gonna hammer it away with Frank Gore. And but yeah, I think that makes sense. The hot hand approach makes sense.
Exactly.
That's usually how it goes when you have a committee, and this is looking a lot like a committee.
A week from tomorrow, preseason game number 4 could be Christian Wade Day here in Orchard Park, right? Why not play him in the 4th preseason?
Yeah, why not? I think he'll probably get a little more. He might get a little more action now in game 3, but he's been just electric anytime he touches the ball. But my Lord, we need to calm down. The way to the 53 talk. I think he's. It's easy to get wrapped up in the shiny new thing, and right now Christian Wade is the new toy on this offense. But let's be very realistic here. He's made 2 plays and he's only gotten the ball 4 times. I haven't been doing this NFL thing a long time, but I learned quickly. And one thing I've learned is that the people who are around the team every day usually know more than the fans, than even the media. They're seeing them practice.
Yeah.
And the people who make the decisions here have decided Christian Wade's the last running back to touch the ball these past 2 games.
Right.
There's probably a reason for that. He is every bit a high caliber athlete. I think he's an NFL caliber athlete, no doubt. But you've seen a couple times where his rugby instincts kick in before his football instincts kick in.
Right.
You saw it in that opening handoff. I mean, rugby Twitter, correct me if I'm wrong, but
He took the handoff wrong.
Yeah, he took it like he's taking a rugby ball. I don't know what the rugby ball's called. That's not why they pay me. But he took it like he's playing rugby. You saw it again on I believe the play that we just watched, where he doesn't follow his lead blockers. To my understanding, that
You don't do that
you
in rugby.
can't do that
yeah.
in rugby.
You can't block for a guy in rugby. The ball has to be the first thing down the field. So it's opposite for him.
Exactly.
And it showed.
And so while that instinct to, see space, hit space is clearly there with him, you see they're losing points or he's not scoring because he runs away from his blockers and toward the other team. And they're little things, and we're nitpicking here for a guy who's got, 100+ yards on just a handful of touches. But those football instincts need to be second nature to him. This isn't rugby anymore. And to put him on the 53-man roster, that means you expect him to make an impact in a real game that really counts in the season. And I don't think he's quite ready to do that yet. I think at least a year or a little bit of time on that practice squad to, build those instincts and make that second nature. I think that's going to be very valuable for a guy like him.
Bill said face backup quarterbacks their first 2 preseason games. It'll be different this Friday night, right? Going against the ones for the Detroit Lions.
I mean, it might. We might see Matt Stafford. I don't believe Detroit has played him to this point.
Right.
And Matt Patricia is a disciple of the Bill Belichick,
Closed
pregame
mouth.
routine. So I don't think we'll find out until, darn near game time. But I think it would be valuable because we already know we know what this defense can do against backup quarterbacks. They, bullied Jacoby Brissett. They made Kyle Allen, look like an undrafted rookie still. And I think you're not seeing I know it's a theme of the show, but we're seeing them do what we expect them to do. It would be, I think, comforting for fans, for staff, for the players themselves to go up against a full group, to go up against a full starting group for a couple of series.
It's hard for a team like Carolina to take 4 All-Pros off the field and look like themselves.
It is.
Because those guys are their identity. Kuechly, Cam Newton, Christian McCaffrey, and Greg Olsen. I mean, those are 4 All-Pro players, and that changes the entire complexion of their offense and defense when they're off.
It does. Ron Rivera came out and said that, the Bills took advantage of a vanilla game plan, which, comes off as a little petty, but in all reality, it was almost like they didn't play the Panthers. If McCaffrey and Cam are not on that offense and Kuechly's not quarterbacking the defense, you basically didn't play the Panthers.
Right.
But they did succeed and do, once again, what you would expect them to do against a group of reserves. And I think that is better. This might be a glass half full approach, but that is way better than the alternative of failing to make an impact against a team without Kuechly and Cam.
You mentioned Matt Patricia. Have you guys seen him yet this summer? You see what he's doing? So he had, earlier this summer, he had, what's the surgery on the back of your leg down here? Achilles tendon repaired, and he's got a cart, and he rides out the midfield. They've got him set up on a platform right at the 50-yard line behind the benches. He's got 4 Gatorade huge jugs in front of him to protect him, and that's where he coaches the game from, the head coach. I saw him. I was watching the Houston game last night. He threw a challenge flag. He had to throw it about 20 yards onto the field. He's not healthy. He rides around the cart and he sits. I don't know if he'll do it this Friday night, but he could not. He didn't want to get hit, obviously, and he has to sit for the entire game. It's pretty amazing.
It's kind of interesting. Interesting
look for
trend of coach injuries. I think LaFleur up in Green Bay, didn't he tear his ACL or
Did he?
something like that?
I didn't know that.
I think he had knee surgery. Or there's some sort of, we'd have to look it up. But
yeah, look for that on Friday. Marcel, this is great. Thank you again for joining us. We appreciate it.
I appreciate it anytime, y'all.
Marcel Louis-Jacques, ESPN NFL Nation reporter covering the Bills. Steve and I coming back. One Bills Live from One Bills Drive on Buffalo Bills Radio.